Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in around 5 minutes. We kick off today with the latest ruling around AI and copyright, and it affirms earlier rulings to suggest that at this stage, AI art cannot be copyrighted in the United States. The DC District Court judge involved in the case said that human beings are a, quote, essential part of a valid copyright claim. Now, this is a case that has been ongoing for some time. It actually started all the way back in 2019, when Stephen Thaler tried to copyright a picture on behalf of an algorithm that he had created, which he called the Creativity Machine. At that time, back in the pre-COVID Stone Ages, the board basically said that there wasn't an element of human authorship, which was a prerequisite of copyright protection. Now, that decision was held up in 2022, leading ultimately to Thaler suing the U.S. Copyright Office. Thaler's claim was that the denial was arbitrary, capricious, and not in accordance with the law, but the judge disagreed. In her decision, Judge Howell wrote that copyright has never been granted to work that was, quote, absent any guiding human hand, and which has been borne out in other cases as well. At the same time, for those who think that copyright should be applied to AI creations, the judge did acknowledge that things are changing fast. She wrote that humanity is, quote, approaching new frontiers in copyright, and that this will create, quote, challenging questions regarding how much human input is necessary. Now, the Copyright Office is itself trying to sort through some of these questions. In March, for example, it affirmed its previous policy that most works generated by AI could not be copyrighted, but said that in certain instances, AI-assisted materials would qualify for protection. As The Hollywood Reporter put it, an application for a work created with the help of AI can support a copyright claim if a human selected or arranged it in a sufficiently creative way that the resulting work constitutes an original work of authorship. Now, if this feels to you like it's very blurry, you are not wrong. And as always is the case, even if no one else makes out, the lawyers will do well in this new world transition. Next up, speaking of copyright cases, one of the groups that is a little upset about AI and copyright issues is authors. Sarah Silverman, very notably, has an open lawsuit against Google and OpenAI around improper training of their models on her work. And then, of course, just last week, we told the story of Prosecraft, which was a book analysis company that was forced to shut down after backlash from authors. The latest part of this saga is a new story from The Atlantic, in which the journalist claims to have seen training data for Meta's Llama that includes more than 170,000 books from authors including Stephen King, James Patterson, Michael Pollan, and others. The author writes, "These books are part of a dataset called Books 3, and its use has not been limited to Llama. Books 3 was also used to train Bloomberg's Bloomberg GPT, Eleuther AI's GPT-J, a popular open source model, and likely other generative AI programs now embedded in websites across the internet. A Meta spokesperson declined to comment on the company's use of Books 3. Bloomberg did not respond to emails requesting comment, and Stella Bitterman, Euler AI's executive director, did not dispute that the company used Books 3 in GPT-J's training data." The author says that of the 170,000 titles, about a third are fiction and two-thirds nonfiction. Many of the titles are from big publishers, including 30,000 from Penguin Random House, 14,000 from HarperCollins, 7,000 from Macmillan, and 1,800 from Oxford University Press. Now, in addition to just these questions of whether books can be used to train AI models legally, there's also the question of concentration of power in AI. Books 3 has an independent developer behind it, Sean Presser. In conversation with The Atlantic author, Presser said that while he's sympathetic to authors' concerns, he thinks the bigger danger is a monopoly on generative AI by big corporations. He said, quote, "It would be better if it wasn't necessary to have something like Books 3, but the alternative is that without Books 3, only OpenAI can do what they're doing." Now, ultimately, obviously, it will end up in front of a judge, and then an appeals court, and then probably the Supreme Court, around whether this type of material can be used to train AI, whether it constitutes fair use or not. But for now, the battle is going to be fought on the pages of magazines, on Twitter, and in the court of public opinion. Speaking of the court of public opinion, more echoes of the conversation we started last week about whether the AI hype cycle is over. You'll remember I did a long episode about what I think is contributing to that sense, and then later in the week we also had Gardner label generative AI at the very peak of inflated expectations. A new piece in Vox came out over the weekend called "Is the AI Boom Already Over? Generative AI Tools Are Generating Less Interest Than Just a Few Months Ago." Now, as per new data, there's not really all that much. The author cites the same SimilarWeb statistics that showed that ChatGPT usage fell in June, but also flagged a story which picked up some traction last week that had two different analytics firms showing that Bing's market share was roughly the same as it was before it started integrating AI features last January. Now, Microsoft's comment on that data has said that the firms were underestimating the numbers, but they wouldn't share their internal data, so there's no way to confirm that. What's interesting to me is less this sort of paltry evidence, and more the meta-narrative shift that this article represents. The fact that this is the type of article that's now getting shared and getting traction does in and of itself say something about the current state of the market. Now, whether that's something is that media is bored with the same narratives and so are looking for a counter-narrative, or whether it says that people really are feeling a lethargy when it comes to the technology, I think is an open and debatable question. But the fact that we're seeing more of this type of article does seem to me to say something. Now, if some users are getting bored with generative AI, there are still tons and tons of professionals around the world who are trying to get out ahead and adapt a new set of skills that they can deploy to get ahead themselves. According to a new LinkedIn Future of Work study, Singapore's workers are the world's fastest in adopting AI skills. The report found that the share of members adding AI skills to their profile grew 20x between January 2016 and earlier this year when the report was compiled. The next 5 countries with the highest rate of AI skills diffusion include Finland, Ireland, India, and Canada. Although I do have to say, I wonder how much self-reporting about skills on LinkedIn is the best way to identify who's actually adapting skills versus believing that positioning themselves as having those skills is a valuable thing. Meanwhile, in another report, this one from IBM, the company says that in their surveys, executives are estimating that 40% of their workforce will need to reskill as a result of implementing AI and automation over just the next 3 years. AI, they say, is ushering in the age of the augmented workforce when human-machine partnerships amplify productivity and deliver exponential business value. So, heady rhetoric on the one hand, skepticism and lethargy on the other. What do you think about the truth of where AI really is right now? Let me know in the comments. Come join us on the AI Breakdown Discord. The link to that is bit.ly/AI Breakdown. And thanks as always for listening or watching. I'll be back soon with the main AI Breakdown.